Uh, Hello, Joe Carolan, comrade Joe Carolan, a great anti-racism activist in all the way from New Zealand, talking to us today, this morning in Dublin. It's evening time there, I guess. Joe, thanks for coming to this call with me today, and I'm ringing you on behalf of... We like to ask against race. Thank you, comrade. We like to ask you a few questions regarding the immediacy of the situation, as well as a political analysis, maybe what's happening, why is it happening, what led to this event, in your opinion, and what sort of actions of solidarity, internationally and nationally, you think are best to happen in terms of push these Nazis, fascists, I think that's how you describe them, anyway, rightly so, back. So, thanks again, Joe Carolan, all the way from New Zealand, Auckland, talking to me today, and we are really delighted to listen to your opinions on the matter in New Zealand, and our solidarity to all the Muslim community and comrades and activists. Please pass them on to all everywhere there.
Well, thank you very much, Mehmet, and thank you very much to all the Irish people and Irish Muslim people for standing in solidarity with those who've died in Christchurch. This is a massive attack, and New Zealand is reeling from this. New Zealand is a very peaceful country, and it is not used to political violence on this level. It has a colonial past, so we couldn't say that this is the worst political massacre in New Zealand history. Certainly Maori people have experienced the brutality of the terrorism of the British Army and the colonial army. But in recent times, there's nothing to compare to this. New Zealand has suffered terrorist attacks before, and all of them have been from right-wing forces against the left. In 1984, the fascists bombed the Trade Union Centre in Wellington, killing the caretaker, Ernie Abbott. And in 1985, French intelligence services bombed the Rainbow Warrior. Both of those events led to huge support for the respective left groups, the unions and Greenpeace. And I think this attack will see the anti-racist movement go mainstream, go to a mass movement in New Zealand. We have a protest planned for Sunday. And already there are thousands of people coming, 6,000-7,000 people on the Facebook event. We've had people coming in non-stop all today, taking posters and leaflets for working class areas around Auckland, support coming in from other unions. And I was at a mosque, my local mosque here in Mount Albert tonight, for a very moving service, and after that, just hundreds of local Muslim brothers and sisters that we know from our area here, that we live beside, that my children go to school with, that we work with. I have 200 Muslim workers in the site that I organise in the centre of the city, Sky City. And, there's a huge determination that we're going to stand up. As Maori people say, kia kaha, stand strong. When you're attacked, you stand up. And there's been hakas, which is the kind of Maori war dance that you might see at rugby. Like, people have been going down and really giving huge support, very strong support to the mosques in New Zealand. And this has backfired on the extreme right, who wanted to use this outrage to start whatever they want, a race war, to divide us. It's actually bringing people together. We've been in a number of internet groups where the far right and the alt-right have been trying to grow online, which is their major tactic for how to recruit people. They'll find it difficult to be on the streets, but they have increased their internet presence notably since the election of Trump. And I think after the Trump election, we started to see the first physical attacks on the left here. we'd called a rally kind of condemning Trump within kind of like days of that, him being elected. And we started seeing these alt-right groups coming at, having a go at trans comrades, having a go at Muslim comrades, even having a go at Maori comrades, which is very unusual in this country because you get your head taken off. But, they were very, very cocky and in your face. And then they started inviting international speakers, and there was one of those when they invented Lauren Southern, an internet Nazi, out to speak, where the kind of need to have a united front of unions and the left to counteract this with Muslims and Maori and migrant groups led us to form a group called Love Aotearoa Hate Racism. And there was a mass rally on the Friday with other racist groups, anti-racist groups, where we saw, hundreds of people turn out. But the next day, the actual fascist element tried to organise in the centre of our city, Auckland, and we went to disrupt that. So we have had a small anti-racist movement, if you like, that has been pointing out that the alt-right are recruiting, that they're stepping up their vitriol. And about a month before these attacks happened, they had a rally in the centre of our city, the biggest multicultural city in the Pacific, to condemn migrants and Muslims in particular for coming over here, saying that we were swamped, that immigration was out of control, and that the United Nations was behind it, the Migration Compact, right? One day before the attacks in Christchurch, the leader of the Green Party, who we have political differences with, but would be seen as a left-wing leader, was attacked and punched brutally by one of these alt-right people who shouted at him about the UN Migration Pact. And then the day after that, as we were warning New Zealand that these were alt-right people, these were Nazis, they were about to get violent. They did get violent. And then the next day was the coordinated violent attacks on the two mosques in Christchurch. There's 50 people dead at the minute. Some of the dead are babies, are children. There's a baby shot 3 times. The people who did this are animals to be able to kill so many people. And there's a video that I've refused to watch of them running around the mosque executing people. And people are absolutely furious. He said that they picked Christchurch, they picked New Zealand precisely because of the harmony that people have here living together, right? We've got our economic problems in this country. We've got our housing crises just as bad as Ireland, but there is no mass racist party in this country yet. And I think that's because the radical left has been constantly frustrating efforts to try and build that party. But there are some grouplets that have emerged. One Nation, based on Pauline Hanson's outfit in Australia, which is really anti-migrant. Hobson's Pledge, which looks back to the old colonialist Hobson, which is viciously anti-Maori. Right-wing Resistance and National Front, which are the classical neo-Nazi formations, but they've been along with these other right groups that provide security for their events, and these are the skinheads and the boot boys. And lastly, Clever Claus, Smart Alec, alt-right group based around people like Milo and all of those kind of fools called Right Minds New Zealand, but they see themselves as the intellectuals of this alt-right. They provide the intellectual framework for them to be confident to attack the left, and they would send most of the ideologues to try and disrupt left-wing rallies. So these groups are out there. They're known, right? The intelligence services weren't onto this. You know, we were pointing to these groups. They're going to be dangerous, right? They're getting more and more strident, and they're going to have a go at someone. They're going to hurt someone. And so this week we've seen the first attack the Green Party leader, and then directly after that, then we had the violent attacks in Christchurch. So this is political, and it really does show the need for wider society to join the left and migrant groups and Muslim groups tackling with these people before you have an atrocity like this in Ireland as well. You know, I'm looking at rural Ireland. Where was the name of the village there where they burned down the hostel?
Well, they tried to. There was an arson attack in two places, actually. One was in Moville in northwestern part, and the other one is Midlands Ireland in Roscommon, Ruski. Obviously, there has been good response in both cases by the community and activists, not just from the area and the rest. But it is a very new development in terms of how brave and how you know, however small and disorganized and yet marginal they may be, it is a new development. And I think what you referred to Trump's election and what emerged thereafter. I mean, other people sometimes say, why you are so concerned about Trump, a president of another country, instead of looking about issues in your own country. In my case, they tell me you're not even from this country. Why are you bothered looking at anything anyway? Go back where you came from. You're not even Irish.
Yeah.
You get that as well. That you're not
I thought you were one of those Irish Turks that we have, you know.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the point, really, isn't it? How Trump now symbolizes an international sort of figure, as a the most powerful politician in the world, obviously, and how he gives the sort of encouragement, really, directly or indirectly. Like, while we are at it, maybe on the Trump, I mean, you may have seen our own Taoiseach, Prime Minister, went to Washington to give Trump the ball of shamrock, as it does. And frankly speaking, the speech he gave there, congratulating for Trump for making America great, which is a far-right slogan, really, which symbolizes the whole idea, was politically and every other way is embarrassing and nasty, and I think a lot of people are saying not in our name. So this is sort of the danger, right? But I'd like to ask you the immediate response after the events, the horrible fascist terror, basically, in the mosque culture. What has happened in the immediacy in terms of community support, response, politicians, ordinary people and campaign groups, and the Muslim community, obviously?
Well, look, we were coming from the wonderful student strike for the climate change, against climate change, which of course was an international event, a youth event, and was actually very strongly anti-capitalist too. We led a great contingent of youth, and we got heaps of new young socialists actually in that rally. And then we heard the bad news at the end of that rally, you know. And so for us, it was a tale of two parts to that day that we won't forget. March 15th, the huge power of a rising movement, and then fascist horror, right-wing horror at the other side. But what did happen was that comrades were together and immediately went back to our union with everybody totally switched on, and we started organizing immediately. We started contacting our Muslim friends. We started contacting migrant groups, Maori groups, and the unions. And we had a meeting of about 70 activists to plan what we're about to do. So the first is the union response. I work for Unite Union, and we are calling for a national day of mourning next Friday. It's a demand from the unions on the Labour government to call a National Day of Mourning, a complete stoppage of work next Friday, so that we can all do what was done during the Egyptian Revolution and ring around mosques. Thousands of us get outside mosques and protect people on Friday prayers. The second thing we're doing is we're calling mass demonstrations and let them be angry and let people say how they feel about racism and fascism, and that will be on Sunday, the Christian Day. And already there are events planned in most major cities, and starting smaller towns, people asking in smaller towns what they should do. So people are beginning to self-organize around the country. And we expect this to be big. There have been a number of vigils and rallies called by the authorities. I was at one on Saturday, which had a lot of how can we say this, establishment speakers speaking, people from the National Party, people from the Labour Party, the police, speaking. And I think there was a line put forward that we're such a wonderful multicultural country here, that this was something that came from outside, that this was an aberration, if you like, that this is not us. Whereas the feeling amongst Maori people, Muslim people and migrant workers, as well as people who've experienced the brutality of the state. I'm a trade unionist, and I've seen the police, attack young workers, many of them brown on picket lines. Something didn't gel about that, I don't think this country is a wonderful country. It has a racist past. It was built in colonial occupation. Maori, who are 15% of the population, are over 50% of the prison population. Migrant workers are working in slavery here in every liquor store in Auckland. Every liquor store in Auckland worked as slaves, like $7 an hour. And Muslim people are talking about how they get Islamophobia every single day, living in this every single day. And the stories about Islamophobia, like casual Islamophobia is one of the major things we need to argue against in workplaces, right? And to get it taken seriously as any other form of racism would be taken, right? And a lot of people's take on that was, it's not racist, it's cultural, like I don't agree with that religion or something. Give me a break. Give me a break, right? And so I think now the debate about Islamophobia in this country has come central to the race question. And you know what? There's not a party here in New Zealand, but Greens, who are not guilty of supporting the wars in the Middle East that led to Islamophobia from the state, support for the wars and the demonization of Muslims in the media. Islamophobia was something that come with kind of support for the wars in Afghanistan, right?
Yeah. Joe, thanks for that. And I think some interesting points you're raising there. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'd just like to talk very briefly about the media and the mainstream politicians. The mainstream politicians and media, they never say we are racists, right? But what they do is actually they constantly bombard the political territory with racist acts of policies, and sometimes far-right fascists take it to their practical conclusions, basically. For example, haven't been there cases where in New Zealand migrant students have been deported, right? And same here in Ireland, for example. And then haven't we heard, for example, a very twisted version of history, as if racism only came to these lands with the migrant workers. When you take to think of Ireland, for example, but you say then about the travellers who have been potentially the most targeted by establishment and by casual racism, basically.
We had a massive burst of anti-traveller racism here recently in New Zealand, directed against Irish travellers. Yeah,
isn't it interesting, right? And then the politicians or the mainstream media talks about the radicalization of Islam and how the mosques are potentially the centers of all of that terror, etc. But interesting enough, if anyone was ever to wonder, I think everything we said during the 2003 anti-war rallies, where these brutal wars will turn the world into a nasty ball of sectarianism, hate, and anger, and it will have consequences that none of us want it to happen, right? And that these brutal wars will no way bring peace and any resolution to any conflict. And I think we are just seeing 20, 30 years later, just the continuous playing of Islamophobia. And I think it has become the main form of racism. What may have been anti-black racism 20, 30, 40 years ago, or the anti-Jewish racism 50, 60 years ago, is now seen to be the Islamophobia as a form of racism. And I think, what do you think is the best way to confront this? Because you're a trade unionist, you're an activist, you're an anti-racist activist. How do we popularize globally the anti-racism struggle and actually make it a key form of struggle in everywhere we go and everything we do, in your opinion?
Very good points you make, Mehmet. So to finish our conversation, I think 2 points. First, racism, where does it come from? Does it come from within the working class because we're ignorant, right? Or does it come from above? Does it come because the political class scapegoat migrants because there's not enough houses and jobs and they're taking all the jobs and houses, right? Now, we get this in a more subtle form, I think, in New Zealand, where during the election, where we stood socialist candidates, we said that refugees were welcome here, migrants are welcome here, and stopped the deportation of the Indian students, for example, that we talked about. Whereas other parties talked about the need to slow down immigration because there was structural pressure on transport and housing. Now, this has led to the rhetoric that we need to house our own starting to come. And you go, where did this come from? This really started to get whipped up during the last election, right? And the Labour Party named Chinese names of people who had bought new houses, i.e. saying that the Chinese are coming here and buying up all the houses. And that's the problem, right? Now, you play with fire, you're going to get burned, right? The Labour Party here, which many people would think of as very progressive, the Prime Minister is capable at presenting herself as Trudeau would be, but her party is in coalition with a nationalist party here called New Zealand First, who have used open Islamophobic and racist terms about migrants, right? There's a quote from Winston Peters, who's our Deputy Prime Minister, that I think is worth reading, right? And this guy is not a fringe character. This would be a party that gets between 5 and 10% vote here and would be a coalition partner for it. So he goes... it starts with their own families. For New Zealand, we must avoid the same politically correct trap that has allowed such communities apart to form. That it is we who must change, they say, as a society to accommodate cultural practices and traditions of others. This is Winston Peters tells Muslim communities and families to clean house. And he later goes on to say, these groups are like the mythical Hydra serpent underbelly with multiple heads, capable of striking at any time and in any direction. Talking again about Muslims in New Zealand. This guy's our Deputy Prime Minister, and the Labour Party are in coalition with this party. I have a feeling that a lot of people who voted for New Zealand First thought that this politician was going to start evicting migrants and refugees and Muslims from their state houses. and that they would get those state houses. They point the finger across the street at people in hijabs and shout at them, you know. And more stories are coming out now because we've experienced violent attack, that more people are actually listening to what Muslim communities are saying about the everyday Islamophobia face and how they're insulted on public transport and streets and coming in and out of their houses. And now some of those disaffected people have turned to these splinter groups, as I was talking about. Right? And then we're so surprised when people get violent and then attack and kill migrants or parties to the left, you know.
Yes. Joe, thank you very much. I have one very quick question, and if you can summarize up for us, please, because we called a sold-out rally yesterday in Dublin. 250 people came, and a lot of people were from the Muslim communities in Dublin, which was very
much. Thank you very much.
We had to do it. This is because that's what we believe in. International sold out at the present time is extremely important because it is our world. It is our world, and we share this world together, right? It was very important that they spoke, and it was very important that our Muslim brothers and sisters weren't just forced to live in fear. And this is a new challenge for us in terms of building more links within the communities, within trade unions, and within the various communities, you know, migrants, Muslims, travelers, refugees. How is the relationship after the event in Christchurch developing? I know there was past relationship, you know, very good forms of unity. But how is the relationship? How are the communities working in terms of, you said, holding hands and protect mosques, which is, I think, very important political and humanitarian statement, right? Do you see hope within all of that nastiness?
Yeah, I do. Look, I mean, for us, the backbone of any anti-racist movement has to be the union movement, has to be the working class movement. You know, it's very natural. We work together. In Sky City, we have 150 nationalities, I think, right? And I have people from Malaysia, from Egypt, from Iraq, Iran, you know. All are, we don't think of people as Muslim, as da-da-da-da-da. We think of them as our union members, as workers, you know. And for us, it's very natural. For our class, it's very natural. We work together. We got the same problems with housing and the rent. We know it because we talk to each other every day in the canteen about it. And because we have a strong union, a left union that's led by fighters, we know that it's not each other who's to blame for these problems. We know it's the rich. And we know it's the rich because they flaunt their wealth in front of us at the casino. We can see it, right? We know that there's enough to go around if it was properly done. We know we can build houses, and we know that everyone could have a better standard of living if there wasn't so much greed. And so part of any effective anti-racist movement has to be able to point the finger at the real people we should be furious at. Now, number one in this country, it is the far right. And the Nazis. Let's start using that word. These people are not the alt-right. These people are not white supremacists. They're fucking Nazis. You're a Nazi. You killed a 2-year-old child. You fucking Nazi dog. But here in Ireland, I think we're going to see a massive turnout of youths involving the unions primarily, but then lots of people from the mosques and lots of people who are Tangat Fenema, the original indigenous owners of this land, the Maori people. And we have had the biggest support at the minute from the Maori people. There have been hackers outside the mosques. Some of the this more staunch and stronger gangs come and see this as a political attack on brown people, and where there might have been some racist feelings before, where Maori, who suffered the worst of poverty, might have blamed new migrants or the other. I think after this, people see this as an attack on fellow brown people. They see this as an attack on fellow people who are just trying to survive in this society and got done in by these Nazis. And I think this is a watershed. This is a change. 1981, there were battles on the streets here in Auckland against apartheid. people took direct action to shut down the racist rugby games with the South Africans, right? There is a mood at the moment for direct action against the far right, and on Sunday we will see the first manifestations of.
Thank you very much, Joe, and for the great insight and this great conversation. Again, please pass on our solidarity, message of solidarity and love and respect to all the community in New Zealand and all to all the activists. And we will follow, we know your websites and Facebook pages, etc. We will follow your events and activities, and we will respond to the international calls, obviously, from Dublin. Yesterday, I think we should conclude with the fact that there were 40, 50 locations globally, which not only marked and celebrated the multiculturalism and diversity in their countries, but also mourned with the Muslim brothers and sisters in New Zealand and stood in with anger and solicitude in solidarity with you people in New Zealand and your activities. Basically, we will continue this. I think we have a war to win, don't we? And we will win that war of anti-racism, unity, solidarity, and in a sense, all very good things for all very good people, without one left, one child, one migrant, one woman, one trans person left behind in all of that. Thank you, comrade.
Good to talk to you, Mehmet, and good to see the people on the streets of Dublin and Athlone and Waterford and Belfast.
Yes.
Very standing with us too. We really are one world, and when we see that kind of solidarity, I think people know that the other world is not just possible; it's coming.